Hi, everyone. In the next few minutes, I will try to convince you why we have been hearing about coding agents mostly in the last 6 months and why it doesn't happen for many, many years beforehand. As you recall, as a field, we have been working on this dream for many, many years. Automating software creation, of course, will unlock a lot of value. It turns out that we have been sitting on a flat exponential curve for several years. So this recent study showed that in the last 6 years, every 7 months, coding agents have doubled their level of autonomy. So for several years, the level of autonomy was very short. We're talking about a few seconds. And then just in the last 12 months, we've been seeing agents running for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, just creating software and doing meaningful work. How did this happen? The research field of agents has been around for decades at this point. They've been called expert systems, they've been called agents in several different places. But when it comes especially to code, maybe the first milestone, the first result that is very notable is in 2022, we had the React pattern, where rather than having LLMs used separately to create reasoning traces and also to act on an environment and obtain observations, we found a way to merge the two of them together. This is a result from Shunyu, who was an intern back then at Google, working on a model that I contributed to called Palm. It was a very powerful model, at least for the standards of 3 years ago. From 2022 until 2024, though, we haven't seen much happening in terms of products. None of you was likely using a coding agent daily for their productivity. And then in mid-2024, we had this paper called ZWE-Agent, where for the first time, models were becoming powerful enough to make actions on a coding environment, use several different tools, such as how to search on the file system, how to view files, edit files, and so forth, run these tools, get back observations from the execution of the code, and then create a feedback loop with the LLM. This was maybe the inception and the first open source project to show that coding agents were actually possible. From there, though, very quickly, we added a lot of complexity to agent architectures. Starting from ZWE-Agent, there was basically an instantiation of React. We went to multi-agent architectures, much more complex. We tried to separate different roles, having an editor agent, a manager agent, a verifier agent, and suddenly we found a bottleneck on how powerful systems were back in the days, and we haven't seen much improvement happening in the second half of 2024. The key insight is that imposing more structure in the core agent is actually harmful. So if you look at these curves, if you had more structure at the beginning, you actually see some improvement, but then you quickly plateau the performance of your agent. While what was happening in background, what the frontier AI labs were working on, was removing structure from the agent scaffolds and just allowing the models to become more proficient at deciding what are the next steps to be working on. Since then, most of the coding agents on the market embrace this new way of creating coding agents. There is this very interesting blog post from Anthropic dated December 2024, where they kind of go back to the initial architecture that I showed you from React, where we have an LLM and the IQ of the model at the center of the architecture. The model decides when to take actions and which actions to take to the environment. We close the feedback loop, and the LLM can take several actions in a row until it decides to either stop the work or heel back control to the user. If you use any coding agents yourself, this kind of user experience will sound very familiar to you. It's basically the key pattern behind Replit, Cloud Code, Cursor, Devin, and so forth. So where do we stand today? My premise, and I think many of you will agree with me, is that frontier models, especially when using massive RL scaling, are going to keep getting better and better as a whole, but especially on coherent, long tool-using agent trajectories. And as a consequence, what is left for companies and researchers that are actually building the agent scaffolds? There is still quite a lot of alpha to be generated just by the agent rather than exclusively the model. For instance, a key problem is how to manage the context. We have been approaching this by creating tools or sub-agents, basically ways to delegate a subset of the work to a separate component in the system, and then returning back the results and a small amount of information back into the main context. then of course the quality of the environment is extremely important. The environment is what provides information back to the agent to understand if the necessary progress has been made, and at the same time it also provides the infrastructure that determines the space of actions that the agent can take, so all the different tools and sub-agents that are available. And last but not least, agent builders can create stacks, can create integrations like data connectors, can bring in search agents. For example, the previous panel was talking quite a lot about that, parallelism, more powerful user experiences, and so forth. Now, there is still a gap between research and vibe coding, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, because I'm aware I'm talking in front of a lot of researchers. The vibe coders want maintainable and iterative development. That's how these products look like. But the truth is, most of our benchmarks today is work in this established setting where you go from an issue directly into a PR, so they just create diffs. And most of the popular repositories are extensible and they already come with a structure. So it's a completely different problem to create PRs rather than just starting to create a piece of software from scratch. Also, the aesthetics matter a lot, and putting a human in the loop is really hard. I'm sure you experience model being way too sycophantic, and that's a problem that most of the technical users are facing today. So my call is we need more evals. The public available evals, such as Bench, are limited. They're focused on a single task, while in reality, major product impact can be accomplished by being able to evaluate on app generation from scratch, front-end functionality, and especially long-term trajectories. So the philosophy that I'm following at Rapid when building Rapid Agent is to bring less structure into the agent loop, but way more structure in the environment. If you're passionate about anything I talk about today, please come talk to me because I'm hiring a lot of people as we speak. Thank you.